Hey, my name is Ronnie Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and I run what's left of my father's horse farm outside Newville, Pennsylvania, mostly alone. I say mostly because the horses don't count as company, not really. 4 rescues in the back paddock, 2 more in the barn closest to the house, all of them needing something from me before the sun's even cleared the tree line. I get up at 5. Every morning, same order, grain first, water second, fence line third, because a downed rail in the dark is the kind of thing that costs you an animal before breakfast. I've done it enough times now that my body starts moving before my mind agrees to wake up. 2 years ago, my father had a heart attack in the stable, between the second and third stall, with a pitchfork still in his hand. I was the one who found him. I'd been an engineer up in Pittsburgh before that. Civil engineering, bridge inspections mostly, $74,000 a year, and a parking spot with my name stenciled on it. I gave all of it up inside of 3 weeks. Somebody had to keep the place standing, and there was nobody else left to volunteer. Less than a year after that, Hannah died on Route 233, on one of those 2-lane roads that turns to black ice the second the temperature drops below freezing. She'd been coming back from her sister's. The other driver walked away with a broken wrist. Hannah didn't walk away from anything, so now it's just me and a loan I can't quite outrun. $38,000 still owed on a hay baler, and a used tractor that breaks down more than it runs, and a house that's too quiet for one person to live in without starting to talk to himself a little. I keep 2 coffee mugs in the cabinet. I don't know why I haven't gotten rid of the second one. I just know I only ever take down the same one every morning, and the other sits there, clean, untouched, like it's waiting on somebody who isn't coming back. That's the kind of man I was on the night it happened. Tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Used to the sound of wind through empty rooms. The storm rolled in around 9. The kind that comes in sideways and rattles the barn doors on their hinges. I'd already checked the horses twice, made sure the loose board by the south fence was nailed down, and I was sitting at the kitchen table doing math on a feed bill I already knew I couldn't pay in full when I heard it. A knock. Soft. Almost not a knock at all. More like something that had tried twice and didn't have the strength for a third. I almost convinced myself it was just the wind working a shutter loose. Then it came again, a little weaker than before, and I knew the wind doesn't knock like that. I opened the front gate into rain that hit me sideways, cold enough to take the breath right out of my chest. There was a young woman standing there, soaked through to the skin, mud up to her shins like she'd walked through more than one ditch to get here. She was shaking, arms wrapped around herself, dark hair plastered flat against her face. When she lifted her head to look at me, I saw the bruise first, a ring of purple-yellow circling her wrist, the kind that doesn't come from falling, the kind that comes from somebody holding on too hard and not letting go. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't even seem sure she had the right to be standing on my porch. "You don't have to tell me anything tonight," I said. "Just come inside before you freeze." I gave her a towel, one of Hannah's old flannel shirts that I still hadn't gotten around to giving away, and pointed her toward the bathroom so she could get out of the wet clothes. She didn't say much. She said, "Thank you," twice, quiet, like she wasn't used to people doing things for her without expecting something back. I told her there was soup on the stove if she wanted it, and went out to check the barn one more time before the worst of the storm hit. That's when I heard it. A low, urgent sound from the second stall. Not quite a whinny, more of a groan, the kind that comes from somewhere deep in an animal's gut. I found Daisy, the yearling we'd pulled out of a neglect case 3 weeks earlier, pawing at the straw, turning her head back toward her flank, trying to lie down and roll. Colic. I knew the word before I even let myself think it. I'd lost a horse to colic once, back when I was a teenager, and the memory of it still had a way of putting ice straight through my chest. I called the emergency line for the closest equine vet. A woman, out of Carlisle, who covered 3 counties on nights like this, and she told me what I already knew. She was 40 minutes out, and 40 minutes can be the whole difference between a horse that lives and one that doesn't. "Walk her," she said. "Don't let her lie down. Watch her gums, watch her breathing, and call me back if anything changes." I had the lead rope in my hand, and Daisy already trying to plant her feet and go down when I heard footsteps behind me. Serena was standing in the barn doorway in Hannah's old shirt, her hair still dripping, looking at the horse like she'd seen this exact thing 100 times before. How long has she been like this? She asked. Maybe 10 minutes. Vet's 40 out. She didn't ask permission. She just walked past me, ran her hand along Daisy's neck, slow and sure, and pressed 2 fingers low against the horse's gum line. Capillary refill's a little slow, but she's not in shock yet, she said. Keep her walking. Big circles, not tight ones. If she tries to go down, you pull her head up, not back. I didn't ask how she knew that. I just did what she said. We walked that horse for over an hour, taking turns when one of our arms gave out, Serena counting Daisy's breaths. Under her breath like she was keeping score in a game only she understood. At one point Daisy tried to buckle at the front knees, and Serena got in front of her, hands flat against the horse's chest, talking low and steady, until the animal found her feet again. By the time the vet's truck pulled up the drive, headlights cutting through the rain, Daisy's gut had started to settle, and the worst of it had already passed. The vet listened to the horse, listened to Serena's rundown of vitals like she was used to taking handoffs from other professionals, and told us both we'd probably saved ourselves a much worse night. After she left, Serena stood in the aisle of the barn with her arms wrapped around herself again, this time not from the cold. You've done that before, I said. More than once. I used to run a stable, she said. Nothing else. No name, no place. No explanation of why a woman who clearly knew her way around a sick horse had shown up on my porch at midnight with mud on her legs and a bruise circling her wrist like a bracelet she never asked for. I let it sit. I'd learned by then that some doors don't open just because you knock on them twice. She slept in the spare room that night, the one that used to be my father's office before it was anybody's bedroom. I lay awake longer than I should have, listening to the rain easing off the tin roof, thinking about the way she'd talked that horse down without a single wasted motion. In the morning, she came down to the kitchen already dressed, hair pulled back, looking like a woman getting ready to leave rather than stay. I should get going, she said. I've taken up enough of your night. You don't owe me anything for last night. No. That's not why I'm saying it. She looked out the kitchen window, toward the long gravel drive that led out to the county road, and something in her face went somewhere else for a second. Then, she looked back at Daisy's stall, visible through the window, and I watched her decide something. I'll just make sure she's steady through the morning, she said. Then I'll go. The morning turned into the afternoon. The afternoon turned into 3 days. By the third evening, I'd stopped pretending I wasn't glad about it. I found her in the barn fixing a hinge on the folding stall door that had been hanging crooked since before my father died, using a screwdriver she'd found in my toolbox without asking, because she'd noticed it bothered her every time she walked past it. I stood there for a second, just watching her work. The way her hands moved like she trusted them more than she trusted most people. You don't have to fix things to earn your dinner, I said. I'm not earning dinner. She didn't look up. I'm fixing a hinge that's been driving me crazy for 2 days. That night I made the offer straight, no dressing it up. I could use the help, I said. Real help, not charity. 16 an hour's the going rate for farm work around here, and that's what I'd pay anybody who knew what they were doing with these horses half as well as you do. She set the screwdriver down slow, like she was giving herself time to decide how to answer. I don't want a free bed, she said. I want a job. There's a difference. Fair enough, I said. $11 an hour to start. Raise after 30 days if the horses like you better than they like me. You just said 16. I say a lot of things when I'm trying to be generous. 11's the number if you actually want to argue about it like a real negotiation. The corner of her mouth moved, just barely. The first thing close to a smile I'd seen from her. 13. 12.50. And you stop fixing things at midnight. Deal. We shook on it standing in the aisle of that barn, her hands still rough with the calluses of somebody who'd worked with animals for a long time before she ever showed up at my gate. And something about the whole exchange, plain, fair, nobody owing anybody anything they hadn't earned, settled something in my chest that hadn't been settled in a long time. The days found a rhythm after that. She was up before me most mornings, which I hadn't thought was possible for anyone who wasn't already living on the place. She knew how to read a horse's mood from 30 feet away, knew which ones needed quiet and which ones needed a firm hand, knew more about hoof care than the farrier I'd been using for 2 years. In the evenings, after the work was done, we'd sit on the porch with coffee, and somewhere in the quiet, I started telling her things. I told her about my father, about finding him in the stable with the pitchfork still in his hand, about how I went back to work the next morning because I didn't know what else a person was supposed to do with grief that big. I told her about Hannah, about the ice on Route 233, about the second coffee mug I couldn't make myself get rid of. Serena never once told me I should be over it by now. She just listened, her eyes steady on mine, like the weight of what I was carrying didn't scare her off. The way it had scared off half the people in town. She never gave me the same back. Whenever I'd ask anything close to her own past, where she was from, what the stable she used to run was called, why a woman with her kind of skill had been walking through a storm, with no car, and a bruise on her wrist, she'd find a way to turn the question gently aside, the way you'd redirect a spooked horse without ever pulling hard on the reins. I noticed something else too. Every time a truck passed on the county road, even one going 60 without slowing down, she'd go still for half a second, eyes cutting toward the window, before she caught herself and went back to whatever she'd been doing. She thought I hadn't noticed. I had. I just didn't push. Some nights I'd catch her, standing at the kitchen window, long after the dishes were done, looking out at the dark stretch of road, like she was waiting for something to come down it that she didn't want to see. I told myself it wasn't my business yet. I told myself when she was ready, she'd tell me. I didn't know yet how close that day already was. It was a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks into Serena working the farm, when I heard tires on gravel that didn't belong to anybody I knew. I was up on the tractor seat, halfway through mowing the south pasture, and I cut the engine just to listen. Most vehicles that come down my drive announce themselves a quarter-mile out. The feed truck rattles. The vet's pickup has a bad muffler. The mail carrier's Jeep whines on the climb. This one didn't rattle or whine. It rolled in slow and quiet, like it had all the time in the world and wanted me to know it. A black SUV, Virginia plates, the kind of vehicle that costs more than most people around here make in 2 years. A man stepped out first, mid-40s maybe, dressed in a suit that had no business being worn on a dirt road. He smoothed his jacket once, the way men do when they want you to notice the fabric. Behind him, a second man got out of the passenger side, bigger, built like he'd spent a long time being paid to look exactly the way he looked. Black polo shirt tucked into dark slacks, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. He didn't come through the gate, he just planted himself beside it, arms loose at his sides, and stood there like a fence post that had decided to watch me. I climbed down off the tractor and walked toward the man in the suit, wiping my hands on my jeans as I went. "Help you with something, Mr. Bennett?" He said my name like he already owned it. Grant Whitlock. The name didn't mean anything to me yet. It would by the end of the week. "I'm looking for someone who used to work for me," he said. "I have reason to believe she's on this property." I kept my face still. "Lot of people work this farm at one time or another. Don't play games with me, son." His voice didn't rise. That was the part that unsettled me. How calm he stayed, like raising his voice would have been beneath him. "I'm not here to make trouble, Mr. Bennett. I'm here to remind you what happens to people who get in my way." Behind him, the man at the gate hadn't moved an inch. He didn't need to. He just stood there. Sunglasses catching the gray light, letting his size do whatever. Talking Grant didn't feel like doing himself. I thought about the screen door behind me before I ever turned to check it. I knew, the way you know a storm's coming before the sky tells you, that Serena was standing on the other side of that mesh, and I knew exactly what she'd see if she looked past me toward that gate. I turned anyway. She was there, one hand gripping the doorframe, so hard her knuckles had gone white, her whole body gone rigid in a way I hadn't seen since the night she showed up, soaked through and shaking. She wasn't looking at Grant, she was looking past him, straight at the man in the black polo, and whatever she saw in that man's stillness, it took the color clean out of her face. "There's nobody here who's yours to find," I said, turning back to Grant. "I think you should get back in your car." Grant studied me for a long moment, the kind of look men give you when they're deciding whether you're worth the trouble of pushing further today. Then he smiled, thin and brief, like he was filing something away for later. "You have a nice piece of land here," he said. "Be a shame if it got complicated." He turned without waiting for an answer, walked back to the SUV, and the man at the gate peeled himself off the post and followed, unhurried, like none of this had cost him anything at all. The SUV backed down the drive the same slow way it had come in, gravel barely crunching under the tires. And then it was gone, and the quiet that came after felt heavier than the quiet that had been there before. I found Serena in the kitchen, both hands flat on the counter, head down, breathing like she'd been running. "Hey." I kept my voice low. "He's gone." She didn't answer right away. When she finally looked up, the fear in her eyes wasn't the fear of being caught at something. I'd seen people look guilty before. This wasn't that. This was the look of somebody calculating how far the nearest door was. That night, after the horses were settled, and the house had gone dark, except for the kitchen light, she told me everything. 18 months, she said. 18 months working his stable outside Leesburg, in Loudoun County, Virginia, the kind of place with white fences that ran for a mile and never once had a board out of place. It started normal, then it didn't. He kept her papers locked in his office, told her it was easier that way. Paid her in cash with no paperwork, so there was nothing to point to if she ever wanted to leave with proof of anything. The man at the gate today, his name was Dale, she said the word like it tasted bad, had been sent to bring her back twice before, the first time finding her at a gas station 40 miles out, the second time at a shelter that turned her away, because Grant had already called ahead with a story about a daughter with a drug problem. The third time she ran, she didn't stop until she'd put 4 days, and most of 2 states between herself and that white fence line. She walked some of it. She didn't tell me how much. "I should go," she said when she finished, "tonight, before he comes back with more than just Dale." "No, Ronnie. No." I said it the way you'd set down something heavy and final. "You're not walking out into the dark because a man in a suit told you to be afraid of him on my property." She didn't argue further that night. I don't think she had it left in her. 4 days later, a certified letter came to the mailbox, at the end of the drive, the kind that makes your stomach drop, before you've even broken the seal. It was from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. Grant Whitlock had filed a criminal complaint. Grand larceny, the letter said, alleging that Serena Alvarez had taken $3,400 in cash and a wristwatch valued at $1,150 before she disappeared. I read it twice standing at the mailbox, then a third time at the kitchen table with Serena watching my face the way you watch weather rolling in. "I never took anything from him," she said, "not $1. "I know, you don't know, you're just saying that." "I know," I said again, and this time I made her look at me when I said it. "Because I've watched you fix a hinge at midnight, because it bothered you that it was crooked. People who steal don't stay up fixing things that aren't theirs." It didn't take long for word to travel. Newville's a small enough town that a stranger asking questions at the feed store on a Tuesday turns into half the county knowing something's wrong by Friday. I found that out firsthand when I walked into the co-op for fence wire and felt the conversation at the counter. The second the door swung shut behind me. 2 men I half recognized from church suppers were standing by the register, and one of them didn't bother lowering his voice enough. "Heard he's got some girl hiding out on his place, wanted down in Virginia for thieving." I set my wire down on the counter harder than I needed to. Serena was waiting in the truck outside. She hadn't wanted to come in, said she'd rather stay in the cab, and now I understood she'd been right to be careful. I walked back out, opened her door, and held my hand out to her in front of anybody in that parking lot who wanted to watch. She hesitated half a second before she took it. "She's not hiding from anything," I said, loud enough to carry back through the open door of the co-op. "If anyone's got a problem with that, you bring it to me, not to her." Nobody said a word. I didn't wait around for them to find one. I helped her up into the truck, walked around, and drove us both home, her hand still folded inside mine on the bench seat the whole way, like she wasn't quite ready yet to believe nobody was going to take it back. The hearing was set for the following Monday, and I spent the days before it the way you spend. The days before a storm you can see coming on radar but can't do anything to stop. Checking locks that didn't need checking, walking the fence line twice when once would have done, lying awake doing math on legal fees. I didn't have a column for yet. It was the Friday night before, somewhere past 11, when the barn camera caught something that didn't belong. I'd put that camera up 2 months earlier, a cheap thing wired to an app on my phone, bought so I could check on a colicky horse without dragging myself out of bed every hour. I wasn't checking on a horse that night. I was checking on the road, because some part of me hadn't stopped checking since the day that SUV first rolled up my drive. The footage was grainy, lit only by what little moonlight made it through the cloud cover. But I knew the shape of that vehicle by now. It was parked at the mouth of my drive, headlights off, engine off too, as far as I could tell. The only thing moving in the whole frame was a small point of orange light, zizzing and falling in the dark, a cigarette, glowing each time somebody pulled on it, then fading low again. Dale, sitting out there in the cold with nothing to do but make sure I knew he hadn't gone anywhere. I called the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office with my hand not quite steady on the phone. A deputy was out within 20 minutes, parked his cruiser nose to nose with that black SUV. And from the porch I watched the whole exchange happen in stop motion. Flashlight, license, a few words I couldn't hear, and then the SUV finally backing away down the road with its headlights still dark until it cleared the property line. The deputy told me before he left that he was filing it as harassment, that he'd note the time, the location, the vehicle. He said it like it was routine. I had no idea yet how much that piece of paper would end up mattering. After his taillights disappeared too, Serena and I were left standing on the porch, in the kind of quiet that comes right after fear, lets go of your chest, but hasn't told your hands yet. She had her arms wrapped around herself, not from cold this time, and she was looking out at the empty road, like she was waiting for it to prove it was really empty. "I haven't been scared like that in a long time," she said. "I thought I'd built enough distance between me and that feeling. I didn't tell her it was going to be fine. I didn't know that yet. I just stood close enough that she'd know I wasn't leaving. I've stopped being careful with my heart around you," I said. "I don't care how this looks to anyone. You're the first thing that's felt steady in 2 years, and I'm not letting one man with money decide what happens to you." She turned to look at me, and there wasn't any fear left in her eyes right then. Not the kind I'd seen at the gate, not the kind I'd seen in the kitchen with her hands flat on the counter. There was something else instead, something that looked a lot like a decision she was finally allowed to make on her own. "Do you want to stay here tonight?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She looked at me a long moment, like she was checking this question for strings before she let herself take it. "If there's room in your bed," she said. I didn't ask if she was sure. I just opened the door and held it for her, the same way I'd held that gate open the first night. She'd shown up soaked and shaking. Except this time, she wasn't a stranger walking into shelter. She was someone choosing to stay. Monday morning came in gray and flat. No rain, just a sky that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. The Magisterial District Court sat in a squat brick building off the square in Carlisle. Nothing grand about it, just fluorescent light and rows of folding chairs, and a docket clerk, who called names like she was reading a grocery list. Maya Chen met us outside, a legal aid attorney, built like she didn't waste motion on anything, folder already under one arm. "We're not fighting the whole case today," she told Serena. "We're fighting whether Virginia's even got grounds to drag you back there. Let me do the talking unless the judge asks you something directly." The hearing didn't take long once it started, but every minute of it felt stretched thin. The Commonwealth's attorney, representing Virginia's interest, read off the complaint. $3,400 cash, a watch valued at $1,150, and asked the court to certify extradition. Maya stood up slow, like she had all the time in the world, which I'd come to learn was exactly the impression she wanted to give. "Your Honor, there's no employment contract here, no pay stubs, no wage records. Mr. Whitlock paid my client in cash, off the books for 18 months. There's no security footage of any alleged theft, no police report filed at the time it supposedly occurred, no inventory of missing property beyond Mr. Whitlock's word." She let that sit a second. "What there is a Cumberland County Sheriff's incident report from 4 nights ago, documenting Mr. Whitlock's private investigator parked outside my client's residence at 11 o'clock at night." Then she called her witness, a wiry man named Curtis Boyd, who used to run the foaling barn on Grant's property before he left 2 years back. He sat in that folding chair, with his hands folded between his knees, and told the court, plain and unhurried, that he'd seen that same investigator, the one called Dale, go looking for 2 other women who'd left Grant's employment before Serena ever did. Both times, he said, it ended the same way. Somebody showing up uninvited, somebody being told to come back. The judge didn't take long to decide. He said the complaint lacked the documentary support required to certify extradition on a felony theft charge, dismissed the matter, and noted on the record that the file would be forwarded to the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office in Loudoun County for review, not of Serena, but of Grant Whitlock, regarding possible identity, document retention, and labor exploitation. Serena didn't cry until we were outside on the courthouse steps. And even then it wasn't loud. It was just her standing there in the flat gray light, both hands pressed over her mouth, like she was holding something in that had been locked down so long. She didn't quite know how to let it out gently. "It's over," I said. "Not all of it," she said. "But that part is." A year went by faster than I expected grief and recovery to ever let it. There's still no sign hanging over the gate. We talked about it once, sitting on the porch with the kind of tired that comes from a good day's work instead of a hard one, and decided against it. Some things don't need a name to mean something. What we do have most Saturday mornings now is a small group of people pulling into that same gravel drive, a couple of veterans, a woman who left a marriage the same way Serena once left Loudoun County, sent our way through a support center up in Harrisburg. Nobody pays us for it. They show up, they muck stalls, they learn to read a horse's ears the way Serena once taught me to read them, and somewhere in an hour of brushing down an animal that doesn't ask anything of them except patience, something in their shoulders comes loose that hadn't come loose in a long while. Serena got her papers back eventually. The real ones, her name spelled the way it was supposed to be spelled, not whatever version of her life Grant had tried to keep locked in a drawer. She opened her own account at the bank in town. These days she doesn't work for an hourly wage anymore. She runs this place beside me, full partner, her name next to mine on the equipment loan I finally paid down, to nothing this spring. Late this afternoon we were standing under the old apple tree out past the south fence, the one my father planted before I was born, watching the horses graze in that long gold light that only shows up for about 20 minutes before the sun gives up on the day. "If you hadn't opened that gate," Serena said. Serena's, not looking at me, looking instead at something further out, "I don't think I'd be standing here right now." I thought about that night for a second, the knock so soft I almost mistook it for wind, the bruise on her wrist, the way she'd stood there not even sure she had the right to ask for help. "I just opened a gate," I said. "You were the one strong enough to walk through it." She didn't answer that. She just leaned her head against my shoulder, and we stood there a while longer, the horses moving slow through the grass, the light going from gold to something softer. Some nights you think you've got nothing left to give anyone. The wells run dry, the bills are stacked up, the house feels too big for the number of people left living in it. But if you still open the door, even just a crack, even when you're tired, even when you've got every reason in the world to keep it shut, it goes somewhere. It finds its way back, in a shape you never would have guessed, on a night you weren't expecting anything at all. Thank you for listening to this one. If it found you at the right time, that's enough.